Hello, my beautiful cuddlebugs. Welcome to Ramblings of a Book Dragon, where we dive into the warmth of good books and unravel stories that feel like a literary hug. I'm Ellie, your host, and I'm thrilled to embark on another cozy adventure with you. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, snuggle into your cozy reading nook, and let's begin. But before we do, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so that you won't miss a single podcast episode. I really value your feedback and book recommendations. Now let's begin today's episode. Today I'm reviewing The Ladies Rewrite the Rules, written by Suzanne Allain and read by Elizabeth Nolden, who also narrated the India Holton books such as The Mysterious Society for Lady Scoundrels. The book follows Diana Boyle, a wealthy young widow who grew up poor and has no desire to marry ever again after her husband, Mr. Boyle, passed away. He was quite a bit older than her, like she's about 20, 21, 22, somewhere in that age range. And he was about in his mid to late 50s when he died. And she, while being a widow, also lives with his sister, whose name is Mildred. And she's just very cranky, very cantankerous, and just was always telling, and she and Mr. Boyle were married for about 5 years before he died, and now they are just continuing to live together, and she's trying to tell her what to do, and it's just not a very good situation. And so the beginning of the book begins when these two gentlemen arrive at the estate, and she's like, why are these two men here? And they're very happy to see her, and her butler he manages to snag this document from them, and he passes it to Mrs. Boyle, to Diana, and she sees that this is this document that is this, it's all about the most wealthy women, this document of single women who are wealthy and eligible, and it is for the second sons. And this apparently was actually a real document that was created. And so she's very angry because it not only gives her name and the amount of money that she has, but it also says where to find her. So she asks her butler to find out where this person is, who wrote it, where he's at. And I kind of wish that we learned a little bit more about how the butler was able to find this guy, because we just find out that he does it. He just figures it out. It's like, okay, that's cool and all, but how? Like, how does he do it? Like, how does he know all this? But I mean, as we know, in the Regency time period, because this is set in Regency England and everything. And so like they all know everything. They all know everything about everyone. And he finds out who he is, and it's this one Maxwell Dean, who is a second son. And the whole reason why he did this is because he had fallen in love with this woman, and it turned out that she was born. So he basically wrote this list for all second sons, because second sons aren't really going to inherit much of anything. And this way they know what they're getting themselves into. And so they will marry someone who is wealthy. And this way they know what they're getting themselves into when they fall in love with a woman. Unfortunately, he didn't realize, because he is an idiot and a man, that this is the perfect list for fortune hunters. Like, you idiot. And so she finds him, and she yells at him, and she's like, do you not know what you've done? Like, you set upon all the eligible single women the fortune hunters. Like, and he was kind of like, well, they could figure it out anyway if they just did a little bit of research. But he was just being a man and not really even thinking about the repercussions on the women. And then because Diana is beautiful and young and pretty, and of course he is handsome and everything, he feels guilty that he did this to her. And it seems like it's primarily because of what happened to her, not really because of what happened to all the other women. But this is a rake, of course. And as all of this story follows the two of them and their relationship. But the main course of the story is that because she has this list of all the women, she sets herself up in a hotel nearby, and she figures out where, since this list has where the women lived, aka in the modern era, doxing, she writes a letter inviting all the women that are in the area that are local, so it's about 20 women, to a tea at the hotel. And then, so this way, since this is a very nice hotel, she figures this way they will know, like, this isn't just some random person, like, she's not trying to do anything, she's not trying to sabotage them, not trying to get any money from them, like, this is someone who actually has money and isn't trying to, like, do anything to them. So they arrive, she explains the situation, she shows them the document, and at first they're all upset. But then one of them, Lady Regina, she's like, oh, why don't we use this situation to our advantage? Because as part of Regency England society, they all have all these rules that they have to follow. And anytime any of these men ask these women to do anything, they have to dance to these men's tunes. Well, now that they know that these men are practically begging these women to marry them, like, yes, we know that they're fortune hunters. We know this. Like, this is all par for the course for these wealthy single women. Like, they know this, especially the women who grew up rich. Diana, she married into wealth because she was distantly related somehow or another. It was explained and I don't quite remember, but anyway. And so, but she didn't grow up in this wealthy sphere. So this is why she invited them all together to explain it and kind of figure out, like, how do we handle all of this? So they decide to rewrite the rules of society. I mean, they can't exactly change society at large, because, I mean, this is society. This is very strict social mores. But at least for right now, they decide, like, hey, while this is going on, while this situation is happening, they decide to throw a ball and invite some of the men that they know have been seeking them out, and kind of turn the situation on them, have them dance to the ladies' tune, such as, like, if a man invites them to asks them to dance and they don't want to, they can say no. On the other hand, if they like a man and they want to dance with them, they can dance as many times as they want. Now, of course, there are still certain rules that they have to follow as ladies of reputable reputations, like, they can dance with them as many times as they want, but of course they can't be caught canoodling with a man. No, we cannot do that, because if that happens, they must marry at once, as they say. And so, but we also find out that Lady Regina, she was scorned from society. She basically became a social outcast because she was supposed to marry a man, and the man, she scorned him and said no, and she was going to run off to Gretna Green with another man, but then there was a whole situation where she was unable to marry that man, and because she had already basically said no to the other guy, she never married, and it just became a whole debacle situation. And so that's why she was basically all for this, and it just became a whole mess. But then Lady Regina and Diana became really good friends, and Lady Regina said, hey, since you're going to be staying in London for the season for right now anyway, why don't you just live with me instead of living in this hotel? Because she didn't really want to live in a hotel anyway, especially since she was trying to get away from her sister-in-law. And so they're living together for right now while they're planning to throw this ball with another lady. And it just became, and they also take these dancing lessons, and meanwhile she's also slowly starting to get to know Maxwell Dean, and it's a lot of modern sensibilities. I mean, we go in knowing that this is going to be a modern take on what could have happened if ladies rewrote the rules, but this was just a really good, fun romp. Like, it was a short book. It was like 260 pages, something like that. And it was just really cute, really light and fun. Like, there was no smut. There's just some kissing, so very light, very nice. It was just a very nice book. And they slowly start to fall in love. And Lady Diana, she didn't want to marry because of what was going on with her first husband. He was emotionally abusive to her. And Maxwell, he is okay with this. He understands this. But he slowly starts to fall in love with her as well. And he's like, how do I get her to realize that I'm not a fortune hunter as well? But then at the end of the book, I wanted to smack them both because he pulls a complete 180, because at first he's thinking to himself, because we also get notes from him, that he's wanting to prove that he does love her for her, that he's not a fortune hunter. But then at the end of the book, he's like, oh, I'm going to go to basically to India as part of the East India Trade Company, and if you are still available in 2 years when I come back, I would love to call on you, because he still thinks that she doesn't want to get married. And it's like, I wanted to smack him upside the back of his head, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, because that is the end of the book, and we're still basically in more of the middle of the book, because like it's all good fun with the bowl, and then we find out that she has a cousin named Lucius Boyle, but it's all very weird, and he's introduced by her sister-in-law. And it's all very strange because like there was never any mention of this man. And if her husband had known about it, why, like if there's an entail, right? Like anyone who's read Pride and Prejudice, like it goes to the first available male son. But it was never written about any of this. It went to Diana. The house, everything, it all went to Diana. So if there's now this sudden mention of this male heir, what the heck is going on here? What is the situation? And like that didn't quite make sense to me, because I thought that Regency England was very much so about finding the next male relative no matter what. But what do I know? I know nothing. I'm sure she did her research, and this is what she was wanting to aim for, because we find out that in fact Lucius is actually the son of I know. I don't know why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable, as some people like to say, because Mildred, like, it's kind of just like, okay, she's cranky and everything. I don't know. It just felt like it felt like she was kind of forcing something in at the end, because all of a sudden, because Mildred was just being a bitch, essentially. Like, she was just a bitch throughout the entire book. And all of a sudden at the end, like, we think, oh, she's the great villain, because she was really wanting Diana to marry Lucius, because he's the cousin. And so, like, this would be a great opportunity to keep it in the family, like to keep the house and for her to be able to stay. And she's just never really given them a time of day or anything like that. And it just doesn't make sense, because, and like, we have a little bit of drama too at the end, because like they have all this greatness with the book, with everything, with the ball, and they have the ball at the same time as some other stuff that's going on, and it's just became this whole, oh, it's a great affair. So now all of a sudden they're back on the outs, and all the other ladies are snapping them again. And so it just felt like there was some continuity, like, I don't know. I see what she was doing with adding in the drama, but it just felt like some of the drama we could have had, it could have been, like, it's already a short book, but I feel like some of it could have been edited out a little bit, because it was just like, did we really need this snubbing situation? Because, I mean, it was, I guess it was sort of included as a way to help encourage Regina and her ex-fiance. They had met up again. They were starting to fall in love again. And because of this drama, they decided it was part of what helped encourage them to get married again. I understand that was what the situation was, but it just felt like, was this really necessary for the book? But that's just me. But then this other thing with Mildred, it it didn't click right to me, because at the end of the book, because Mildred just wasn't a very nice person throughout the entire book. And like, we barely see her. And then at the end of the book, she suddenly gets this conscience, and she arrives, and we find out, because they look in the Bible. And this is the thing that didn't make sense to me, because Maxwell is like, hey, let's look in the family Bible and see if there's any mention of this Lucius or his father, if there's any brothers or anything like that. And we find out that Mildred wrote down Mr. Boyle's death, the marriage, that stuff. So it's clear that Mildred knows about the Bible, and it's clear that she's able to keep the line, like, she writes in it. And so if she was wanting to kind of encourage this addition, I guess if she's religious, it's the whole thou shalt not lie. But like, if she was wanting to try to do this trickery before she got her conscience back, why didn't she do that? But what do I know? Like, I guess that would have made a little bit of sense. But I guess they could have also realized, hey, why is this written in her hand? I don't know. But she confesses, but we find out from the butler, because the butler knows everything, and he was kind of pissed off that Mr. Boyle basically was like, oh, for all your years of service, I'm just giving you some crap. And he was kind of pissed off about that. And we find out also that Mildred basically only got 2,000 pounds, and she was supposed to receive a lot more than that when she got married as part of her dowry. So Diana, she was like, okay, I'm going to give you back your dowry because that is what you deserved, because she never got married. So it's good. And then it all just worked out all happily ever after. And then because Lady Regina was getting married as well, she's like, okay, I'm going to sell you some of this land so that you guys can live right next to me and everything. So then she and her best friend are going to live right next door to each other, and they're going to have their houses all together. And Mildred had this change of heart, and she's like, oh yes, I'm going to be so nice to you. Let's have a fresh start. But at least Diana does realize that, hey, this is probably not going to be a forever thing. Let's see how long this lasts until Mildred is back to her old ways, which is good. But then going back to what I was saying before, it just was another thing that was like, is this bit of dramatics really necessary, that Maxwell was going to go off to India, to the East India Trading Company, that he was doing that? It was just so dramatic. And I guess he was doing this because he was wanting to try to find a way to make some money, because she had mentioned that, hey, men can make money, women can't. And the fact that he was doing all this as a way to try to get money, so that there wasn't any way for a second son to say, hey, you tricked me, that's just utter bullshit. Which makes sense. Like, I completely agree with her point. But the fact that he was being so dramatic about it was just like, really? Really? This is what you're doing? So she gets all upset. And I was worried that this was going to be an end of the scene at the ball, because they were going to throw another ball for Lady Regina's engagement. I thought this was going to be a big dramatic thing. But luckily, she goes to where he lives, and she's dressed all in black, and she's like, marry me. And so he agrees, and it becomes a whole big to-do. And so he's like, yeah, of course I'll marry you, and everything. But overall, I liked it, and I would read it again. So I will catch you next time. Bye.